Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Ultiworld senior editor Keith Rayner. And Keith, it's the start of fall. September is here. Pumpkin spice lattes, NFL season, NBA right around the corner, Club Nationals, Club Series. It's a good time.
It's funny you mentioned pumpkin spice. So I went to Aldi yesterday because there used to be an Aldi where I live, but I had to go to the bank for another reason, which is over near Aldi. So it's like a rare chance to visit Aldi and get some low priced groceries. And I was gonna buy bagels, but I picked up the bagels and I took them away, and then only after I was walking away did I realize that they were pumpkin spice bagels. And I was like, oh my god, no! Please edit not this. I had to go back and put them back. Not a pumpkin spice guy.
You're not a pumpkin spice guy, period.
I'm not really a pumpkin guy, period.
Do you like pumpkin pie?
No, not really.
Well, I guess that's pretty much puts you out on anything else that has to do with pumpkin. It all just tastes like pumpkin pie. All right. Well, what's your favorite fall thing then? Not that it feels like fall right now. I mean, it's 95 degrees outside.
I can't even take my mind there. I'm coming back from Pro Champs and it was 97.
So crazy.
Nothing fall-like about it.
All right. Well, I'll let you think about that. Your favorite
the start
fall
of the
things.
College season, Charlie, of course, is my favorite thing about fall.
Well, Keith, you were at the Pro Champs this past weekend. I was not. I was up in
You
Vermont.
were at a different pros championship, sort of.
I was at the Club Nationals of disc golf.
There you go.
I was at the World Championships for the PDGA. It's the biggest disc golf tournament on the calendar. Very exciting stuff. I was commentating on the FPO division.
Actual pros playing a championship.
Literal pros. The winners, the Kristen Tatar, who won her second straight world title, won $15,000 in prize money and probably quite a bit more from her sponsors for winning the tournament. And MPO Isaac Robinson got his second major victory, and he took home a $30,000 prize, along with about that much from his sponsor, he told us in an interview. So yeah, they make a real living playing the Frisbee game.
The only people who might have taken in $45,000 combined from the USA Ultimate Pro Championships is Culver's. The Culver's that was next to the fields maybe made $45K off this tournament, but I don't think anybody else did.
It actually raised the GDP of Milwaukee to have a Frisbee tournament next to the Culver's.
Cheese curds are good.
They are good, but they're not that good at Culver's. This is my take. Look, I get it. I sometimes order them because it's like a nice novelty, but if you've had the real cheese curds from the best restaurants, oh my God, they're so much better.
If I lived near, if cheese curds were regularly available to me, I think Culver's would be a lot less appealing. But as far as a fast food item go, they're both novel and delicious. But yes, I've had real better cheese curds. They're, this is not the only part of the world that's discovered frying cheese is delicious.
I think Culver's is the best fast food. When you take it in totality of the burgers, the fries, or the cheese curds, the ice cream, I've said it before on this show and I'll say it again. In-N-Out, I'm majorly on the outside of that equation.
I wasn't going to say it, but it was immediately who I thought of.
No, it's
overhyped In-N-Out.
It's so weak. In-N-Out is the weak. I was just talking to somebody about this. They're like, the fries are trash. And I was like, yes. And then we bonded because they cooked the fries wrong. They only cooked them once. That is not how you make French fries. It's a sin what they do. And people are like, oh, we'll get them extra crispy. I'm like, okay, so they can just cook them wrong for longer. And so they're just like this husk. It's awful. All the In-N-Out West Coast people, you are deluding yourselves.
This is amazing because y'all don't even know. In the pre-show meeting, the intro was non-existent, and now we're ranting about fast food places. Cookout over In-N-Out, and Culver's is at Cookout level of delivering our regional food goods.
Well, Cookout I like. Cookout is cheap, and so is In-N-Out.
Super.
I give In-N-Out credit for being cheap. Culver's is more expensive, but Cookout, great shakes. I just feel like the food it's very low quality in my view.
It's definitely affordable more than delicious.
But I respect Cookout because it's open super late.
It has like 80 different shake flavors. It's wild.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about Pro Champs. Keith,
there's a lot to talk about. There's a big
club
meal.
season has been insane, and it continues at the Pro Championships. I don't even know. Is there a clear favorite in any division going into the, let's say, the series to win the title? A clear favorite. You can't sit here and tell me that it's Pony.
That's your only argument is Pony. I can hear the like, okay, well, Pony, when you give them back their star players and give them another week, month, whatever.
They just got sent into the shadow realm by Truck Stop.
I just, I think that you have to say that even if they are the favorite, they're not a clear favorite. So I think you got to go with it. It's an open field, baby.
It is an open field. We're going to start with the men's division, and then we'll talk mixed. We're going to hear from a couple of players on Phoenix. Excuse me. I want to say Scandal, but no. The narratives are flipping. Phoenix, Alex Barnett and Bridget Mizener will join us a little bit, and then we'll break down the women's division after the interview. So we begin in the men's division. Truck Stop gets the win. They thump Pony in semis, Keith. And they continue on to the final where, they just looked really sharp all weekend long. They beat Chain, a surprising upstart Chain in the final 15-14. Great game. A lot of close games around the division. Truck Stop, though, ultimately does go undefeated. And the closest game they had was that one against Chain. We knew this team was good. In fact, I don't think it comes as a surprise that they won. I think it does come as a surprise that they crushed Pony like they did, even a shorthanded Pony. And I guess what are your thoughts on this Truck Stop team after now US Open and Pro Champs?
Well, that must have been a really cathartic win in semifinals. We've talked about the parallels between Truck Stop and Pony and the Empire and Breeze, and DC men's ultimate being successful against New York men's ultimate has been a long time coming, and I'm sure this feels very vindicating, and that could easily flip around if Pony gets revenge at nationals when it truly is on the line. But you can't be mad if you're DC about the signs that this shows. Your ability to go out there and deliver a knockout blow to the team that feels like they're going to be standing in your way. And if it isn't Pony, who else is there who Truck hasn't shown that they can outplay? They beat Machine in arguably, aside from that Pony game, arguably what felt like their biggest win of the weekend as far as the difference between them and their opponent. I know they're a bigger score margin against Rhino or whatnot, but Truck felt like clearly the better team in that matchup. And I think that you were seeing Truck's defense figure things out in a way that we haven't seen before, and that's when you feel like they could ascend to the next level.
So, looking at the stats from this Truck Pony game, and I feel fortunate that we have some stats to look at because USAU and the tournament did not keep stats in any of the games, but we have stats from the games that were commentated, which is very helpful because I want to point out a couple things. Obviously, it was a windy game, Keith, and there were mistakes from both sides and quite a few turnovers. But I think the thing is very interesting. Truck Stop goes 8 for 11 on break chances. They just absolutely crushed this Pony O-line when they got Pony onto the defensive side of the disc. And that, to me, feels like a big story where Pony's offense showed some issues back at US Open. They continued to have issues here, and they were really just run out of the gym by a Truck team that was executing at a much higher level.
That was something that Evan Lepler and Ian Toner talked about on the broadcast was, Truck needing to win on that axis, in that quadrant when their D-line had the disc against Pony's O-line, and they were pretty dominant in that area, and that's going to be something that Pony wants to clean up. At this point, we have to acknowledge the big caveat that I think everybody's going to talk about when they talk about Pony's weekend. There were missing people, and I know we've been talking Truck, but it's worth noting Pony, no Ben Yacht, There was no Jeff Babbitt. We don't know what Babbitt's status is going to be moving forward. On day one, there was no Ryan Oscar. There was no Jack Williams this weekend. Sean Keegan is apparently not done for the season, but not playing yet. So those were, I think, the key folks who were missing this weekend. And that's a lot of potential O-line personnel. So I think that you're still they were already going to have trouble building chemistry coming into this tournament and coming into the season. And this is being exacerbated by a lack of opportunity to figure out exactly what their O-line is going to look like. So I think that is playing into the issues that you're seeing for them.
Is it time to be worried, or do they just need to be at full strength and they're going to go win?
I think it's time to be worried compared to where we were before the season. There were no worries before the season, basically, right? Like, it felt like they could go out and play a B+ game and beat every team in the field playing their A+ game. And that doesn't necessarily feel like the case anymore. Pony's not going to get to walk to a title. I think that Truck obviously is a perfect foil for Pony on the right day if Pony doesn't play well. But I think that we've seen that the rest of the field is a little tougher than we anticipated. Do I think that I expect Chain or Machine or even like Ring to put together 5 really great games in a row at Nationals and run it back like Bravo did? Or I would still include Bravo on that list. No, but do I think that those teams, A+ game, could beat Pony's B game? I'm starting to think so. And I don't think Pony is planning on resting on their laurels, but I think it's clear right now that talent alone is not going to take them to a championship this year.
Well, let's talk about Chain Lightning. Chain opens up the tournament by beating Pony. And you're like, okay, what's going on, Chain? They lose to Revolver 15-10, but then they come out, they beat Machine in the crossover game. They beat Revolver the second time they faced them in semis 15-14, and then they almost beat Truck, but end up falling on Universe 15-14. Keith, I don't think we really had this as part of our, expectations whatsoever for this team. I mean, I think there was some excitement that they could, show up and maybe make a run to the bracket or maybe even semis, but, to get all the way to the final. Did you see this at all? And, how good can this team be as we get into Nationals?
In the beginning of the year, I liked Chain as a sleeper team. Once we got into the season, I started to fade on that a little bit. PEC West, they go 3-3. They lose to Goat and Rhino and Sockeye. They're shorthanded though, so you can kind of write it off. They go to ESC. They blow that game to Dig. They blow the lead against Dig and don't look super impressive at ESC. But I started to think, okay, maybe they're just part of the pack. So this Pro Champs weekend, I think, was a big step forward for them and shows some of the ceiling off. They play that close game with the super shorthanded Pony squad. But they beat Vault by 3. They beat Bravo then. And then that game against Revolver, they broke to win that game. They were really up against it against Revolver and showed a lot of tenacity to come back in that game. You look at the numbers from the final. Hayden Austin Nab goes off to the tune of 9 scores. So I think that they're showing that they also have some of those top end stars, those all club level players. I think Hayden Austin Nab and Brett Holzmeyer are probably the two to look at from this Chain team. I think that with that and the depth that they have around those players, this team is a threat. I think that they are on the level with that group like Machine, where when they're playing well, they're super dangerous. I wonder a little bit about their consistency. It was a windy situation, and I think they played well in that. But I'm not sure exactly what to expect to them from a game to game basis. But this was a very pleasant surprise if you're a Chain fan.
Yeah. Is this real? Their defense did not turn it over against Truck, and they still lost. They went 3 for 3 on break chances. That's very impressive.
Well, one half of that's impressive.
Hayden Austin, maybe three break chances is not enough. But I mean, against Truck, how many are you going to get? I don't know. Look, Hayden Austin Nab is starting to look like the real deal. He was great in semis too against Revolver.
Mm-hmm.
And, we saw him play at player of the year level in college. And I think it was evident that he had the capacity to become a good club player. But I don't know that we necessarily, I didn't expect him to make this much of a leap into being like, okay, this is an all club guy this quickly. But, if Chain is going to keep getting this level of performance from him, and they're going to have the, some of the quality of some of their big downfield players, and they've really improved the like bottom 8 spots on the roster, it feels like. That is combining into making them look like a credible threat to get to a semi-national spot. I'm not sure I buy them beyond that unless conditions really break their way. I don't know that they're going to be capable of kind of like playing in a really track meet type game. But this is pretty impressive.
They are going to be pretty proud of this effort. And like you look up and down the roster, and yeah, they have the big name guys, but they were getting great production out of Liam Haberfeld. Pat Earls has been a great addition to their offense. Lucas McClamrock, Kenny Taylor had some highlights. Adam Grossberg, the youngster, he had some big moments. Dean Ramsey, like Tanner Robinson had the game-winning, layout score against Revolver in the semis. Frankie Fernandez made some big plays. Like, these are not people who are being talked about nationally. When we talked about this on the broadcast during the weekend, but we're starting to put together our club top 25 players list. And I don't think a lot of these guys are going to be mentioned, but these Chain players are showing that they can go up against those elite players, and some of those guys are going to step up each game. And that to me is what Chain needs to break through.
They were down 8-5 to Truck at half, and they outscored them 9-7 in the second half. They just couldn't get that one last break. Truck had 4 straight clean O points to win the game, 15-14. And, Truck's going to do that. So they're going to have to work on their defense and try to figure out, okay, how could we take the ball away from a team like Truck? And again, look, it's pro champs. It's, not everybody's at 100%. Obviously, Pony, the number one culprit there, but big building block weekend for Chain. We've seen this before, though, from them in the regular season, and then watched them struggle at nationals. So I want to see them show up this time. Where are you at with Machine, Keith?
This was a bit of a disconcerting weekend for them. I think I felt like after what we saw from them at US Open, that they had the opportunity to step forward into that Truck and Prony stratosphere. And I think they are in a pretty big band after that. There's like 5 or 6 teams from this field that I feel like are similarly capable.
Yeah, they're in the Revolver tier.
Yeah, Revolver, Chain, Ring, Bravo. Like, I think all those teams are right around each other, and I wouldn't feel confident picking against or for them in any given scenario. So yeah, this to me, that felt like a step backwards for a Machine team that felt like, okay, maybe they're ready to make a move and assert themselves as real title contenders. But I think they mostly just held the line.
Well, you mentioned Ring. I want to talk about them because we haven't really seen them at that much at this point in the season. So, they had this kind of skeleton crew go out to PEC East where they lost to Omen. And they got the win over Dig, and they beat Machine. They beat Machine again. And they were competitive, but they lose to Double Wide, Truck, Machine, Bravo. Their best win is definitely the 12-11 win over Machine in Consolation, but it doesn't really feel like this team has showed that it can go be a semis team in nationals yet.
Shout out to, I want to say it was Justin Allen who sent off the Ring of Fire never loses to Machine tweet. That joke will never get old. It really won't. The number one thing about Ring, Charlie Eisenhood, is it is absolutely freaking weird to see Matt Rader wearing a Ring jersey. It's super weird. I can't handle it. I would say that Ring still looks like they're figuring things out. They're really handing the keys to some of these young guys. These UNC guys are getting pretty pivotal roles. There were times when Ben Dameron was the best player on this team. John McDonald, Rutledge Smith had a lot to do. I still think, when they got to push all their chips in, they're still going to look at Saul and Gooch and Durs and Eric Taylor if he's healthy. Those are going to be, I think, the players that they rely on the most, but they're really letting these young guys roam, and I think counting on them to grow into being top flight players this year if they want to achieve more than they did this weekend. And you can see from the close results, the wind is going to implicate be a part of some of that, but I think they let some opportunities, get away. I think they probably could have handled that machine game better. I think they definitely could have handled the end of the Bravo game better. Getting broken to lose when you were up is a tough spot to be in, but there's flashes still from them. It would not surprise me if they show up to nationals and they look more like, a borderline semis team. If you think right now that they're not at that level, that would not surprise me. The talent is clearly there. It's just they're young.
I genuinely, I'm not worried about their offense. I think they have enough talent with Searles Bowes and Dameron and all these young guys to put together an excellent offensive line. I'm a little questioning more about the depth and especially the defense. Did Eric Taylor play this weekend?
I don't think that he did.
And see,
when I
that's the
saw
big
him,
wild
he was
card.
very, very sidelined.
That is the big wild card because if he's back for nationals, which hopefully he is able to play by nationals, and he plugs in on their D-line, which is I'm sure what they'll do, all of a sudden you have a guy out there who can change the tide of what their defense is capable of, both defensively and after the turn. So, there's still plenty of things to be excited about if you're a Ring fan, but what they have right now, like the snapshot from right now at Pro Champs, this is a quarters team and they will lose in quarters. So they're going to have to take a step forward to credibly challenge the top teams.
To me, when I watch them play, they look like this feels like it's rosy based on the results from Pro Champs, but to me they're like closer to the bottom of that same tier with Chain. I think they are in the same realm as one another, but the results are going to bring at the bottom of that pool. But I think that their talent level is at the same size as the Chains and Machines in the world.
Any final thoughts on the men's division, Keith?
Are we just folding up shop on Rhino Slam?
Yep. I think doors closed. I mean, what I don't know. We all came into the season being like, wow, this is going to be the team there, but here they come. They haven't done it once. They haven't showed us once that they could be that semis team we saw last year.
I don't know. I don't feel like you can keep the exclamation on Rhino Slam right now. It's more Rhino Slam, and then you just trail off.
It's kinda,
just
Rhino
ellipsis.
Slam.
Yeah, that's what it feels like right now. I mean, I keep you look at the list of names, you get excited. I don't know how the results just aren't coming together. But yeah, there's just sure they could flip it around. There's no denying it, but not a great season for them so far.
I need them to come up. I need to come to regionals and win it comfortably for me to start to think that this team is going to do much.
I'm right with you.
All right,
maybe that's the emergency services trying to revive Rhino Slam season.
I just called them. Hey,
You're putting out the fires
on
Rhino Slam.
I don't know why they drove the truck from New York to Portland, but they're on the move. They're on the move. Oh my God. All right, mixed division.
Whoa.
If you want to try to know what happened in the mixed division, just get a dartboard out. Put one of the team's names in each of the triangles on the dartboard and throw a dart and be like, okay, that's team one. Throw another dart, that's team two. And then you throw one third dart to determine, you pick odd or even. And then you throw a third dart, and if it's odd, team one wins, and if it's even, team two wins. And then that's your bracket. You built it.
It is a wild. I feel like the other divisions are kind of stealing their thunder. This is what mixed division is all about. And we're probably discrediting AMP and BFG a little bit, given that BFG is in a second straight Triple Crown Tour final, and Amp was probably honestly should have been in the final, but couldn't finish that semifinal against BFG off. They're near the top. But how about Dragon Thrust?
Dragon Thrust, bottom seed, looked horrendous earlier this year, wins the tournament. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, I got to talk about this before almost anything else. Hybrid steals the bid from Shine in deep consolation by beating them in the final game of the weekend, and ends up getting the bid by 1 point and taking it from the Southeast. Brutal for the Southeast.
Yeah, so we actually had this round on Field Pass, and I'll set you the stage. So Hybrid is 1 spot out by like 5 points or something like that. They're 1 spot out of having a bid. Above them is Shine, a team from the Southeast, and above Shine by just a handful of points is Slow out of the Northeast. Slow is playing against Toro, another Southeast team who doesn't have a shot at a bid, but could like they're I don't know 10 spots down or something like that. But basically is in that game representing Shine. Like they are an avatar of Shine. Because if they could beat Slow, maybe they could kick them below Shine. Meanwhile, Hybrid, so you have 3 different regions represented at the same time, and they go down to the wire. Like that Polar Bears Hybrid game was really close, and Slow and Toro went to Universe. So we're like watching this on the live stream and thinking like each goal could be the bid changing hands in theory. Like we should have had a physical manifestation. Should have had a person running from field to field. We need the New York Times
needle.
Yeah, as each team scored and potentially earned the bid. It was quite dramatic in those final moments. And then we didn't even know because it was so close mathematically that it felt like it was within the margin of error. So even Cody Mills was like, we won't really know until USAU does their magic and says like, here's the final results, because it was so close.
Any thrown out game could tip the scales.
Even just somebody saying like, oh, this game was 13-10 and not 13-11 somewhere along the line. Like we could have had a situation like that pop up.
Wild stuff. So ultimately Slow wins 14-12 over Toro. Hybrid wins 15-12 over Polar Bears. And that is just enough for Hybrid to get over the line and to send Shine packing. Tough to be Shine and be sitting at home and have that happen.
It certainly is. But shout out to Crocs, or they came into the weekend the number 3 team, and they're sitting here probably watching Hybrid potentially throw away their bid. After getting steamrolled by Noise and Amp the day before and barely beating Toro and Slow. Then that like tanked their ranking, I guess. Then they had to deal with Dragon Thrust jumping all the way from underneath them into the bid picture. So I'm sure Crocs was like, come on, we have the best season in program history, and now the other great team in our region is going to lose the bid. Like, I'm sure they were relieved.
So, Dragon, Keith, I mean, you were on the bandwagon. You got on the train. You didn't pull the trigger all the way and say they were going to win the tournament, but you had them going to the final. And they weren't perfect. They did lose a game. They lost 14-10 to Exist in their 3rd game of pool play. But then they beat BFG twice. They beat Noise and Cruz. I feel like they just kind of have ownage over Noise. But beating BFG twice is pretty legit.
It sure is. And I felt like their US Open was a little bit of an aberration. We talked at length about how they had lost a bunch of games on Universe. It just didn't feel like it was necessarily representative of them. Getting to see them in person confirmed that they were strong in the wind, but I think that there's a good amount of depth, and I think that they have a strong enough defense. Like, I think a lot of teams can go out there and put together a solid offense, and the big names on this team can carry an offense. That Daniel Byers and Caleb Denacor and Brian Vanoka and Erica Bacon, like that group's going to be able to carry an O-line to success. Jason Cheetah has been a great addition for them as well. But seeing their D-line players come out and be able to deliver, that is the difference maker for this team. When they can get Tanner Barkis and Jane Cook when she's healthy, and Sam Berglund, the Berg, what do they call them in the UDL? The Berg boys or whatever. Sam Berglund and Brett Bergmeyer, Ian McCoskey, Caleb Blanick. Like these players playing well is the thing that turns them from being, a good mixed team into a title contender.
Do you buy them as a title contender after this weekend?
For sure. I think we had them before the season. I think we felt like, we were talking about some teams that we are not necessarily talking about right now, but AMP, BFG, and Dragon. Like I think that there's nothing has dispelled that for me. Even the U.S. Open, which again still feels a little bit aberrant. I think that they're totally in the mix.
So BFG finishes second, a little up and down weekend for them. Obviously, mentioned the 2 Dragon losses. They also dropped a game to Love Tractor 11-10 in pool play, but they beat Hybrid 15-13 in pre-semis, and they beat AMP 15-14 in semis. So a little bit of a comeback victory there. Obviously, this team's really good, Keith. Do they have what it takes to, make a run all the way through the Nationals bracket and win the championship again?
Well, they've been in the finals in 2 major tournaments in a row. They're clearly, a fallible team. They've lost games along the way. They lost in the final of the U.S. Open, but they lost to Noise prior to that at U.S. Open, and then obviously they dropped this game to Love Tractor. They lose the pair to Dragon Thrust. So this is not like some juggernaut team or anything, but they have been one of the few teams that's been consistent, and that's a lot more than you could say for some other squads. They didn't have Samantha Rodenberg this weekend. I think that that's a player who could make a big difference for them. But yeah, there's a lot that I like about this team. I think that Rodenberg in particular could be really helpful because at the US Open, I felt like their offense was a little one note. They sometimes feel like they're really reliant on Cheryl Sue and Jeff Pape and Tommy Lee to just kind of make things happen when the system breaks down. But I do like that they have quality D-line players. They've got depth. They're not like necessarily the most explosively athletic team, but that's something that I think Rodenberg could help assuage that problem as well. So yeah, they're the real deal. They've got a lot of veteran leadership. They're a team with a strong team identity. They're fully. I think there's an argument to say that they're the favorite to win the title.
I got to say that AMP still feels kind of like the overall national favorite to me, even though they lost to BFG. It was a super sloppy game in that semifinal. AMP had 24 turnovers to BFG's 23. But they kind of killed everybody else. And I just feel like on the whole, when I kind of wide view of the regular season, it just feels like AMP showed us the highest level of ceiling. I haven't watched this BFG AMP game, so I don't want to like overly try to read into it. Super close, back and forth. AMP actually went up 13-10 before giving up 2 straight breaks to lose. I just feel like they were the better team and they probably should have won the game.
I saw the back end of this game, like the last maybe 10 points or so, and I kind of felt the same way until those last 2 points. To be clear, they were missing Raham Azfari. They're missing a couple other bodies. No Linda Morse all weekend. Those are two those are two people
key.
Who might be in your top 25 players, maybe your top 10.
Sure.
So there are some caveats to be had with AMP. I think Delrico Johnson, he was out there this weekend, was a nice add for them. They got Will Haletsky back. They're my title favorite right now. I think they would be your odds-on favorite given what we've seen from them this tournament or this season so far. And they, in that game, in that final, like many of the games this weekend, it was affected by the wind. And when they gave up an upwind goal, they then had to try and hold going upwind and failed to do that. I mean, that was a great defensive possession for BFG on Universe Point. But I was a little surprised. I'm looking down there and it's like Sam Grossberg catching the pole. He's like 17. This is a team with like a bunch of U.S. national teamers, and he's the person that they're calling upon. I don't know. That felt a little regular season-y to me. Like if it's semis and nationals, you're telling me that it's not Paul Owens and Jordan Ryan and Raha Mazfari and Linda Morse in control. Like, I don't know. That was a little odd for me. And Grossberg is a good player. Great, had a good weekend, but yeah.
I mean, part of what the regular season is about, especially for a team at that level, is getting players experience in big spots. If you win that game, if you don't win that game, how much does it really matter to your season? It's probably better to give people the reps, especially when you're already missing some of your O-liners. So, get your point, for sure.
I still think they're the favorite. I think that they have the highest ceiling. They're a really tough matchup because they're so athletic. You know, they ask you to solve a lot of problems at once, and they're never going to be a clean team. Like, that's not their game. But yeah, they're going to put out Henry Ng and Lindsay McKenna and Linda Morse and say, like, okay, come up with 4 people that can guard all these threats that we have. That's the game plan, and they just beat you up that way. They got a bunch of grinders who go out there and you know, chew the scenery on defense, so to speak. But they have this big athletic team, and they can just overpower teams in a way that very few teams have, like a superpower like that.
All right, let's talk about Exist. They go 5-2. They get pretty comfortable wins over Love Tractor, Dragon, Toro, Hybrid, and then Love Tractor again in Constellation. However, their losses came both in pool play, which means that they didn't make the bracket. They lose to BFG and then Polar Bears. All the hype on this team coming into the season and coming off their semis performance last year. Is it time to smash the panic button on Exist when it comes, not for nationals, but when it comes to their ability to be a team that we could see back in the finals of nationals?
Yeah, I'm going to push the button. I'm worried right now. I feel like I have yet to see this team max out and like even really get to that ceiling. Like they played so well in the final rounds of nationals last year, and I just like have been waiting to see the team feel like it's clicking like that. And just in the games that I've seen, I haven't seen that. I worry about their offense a little bit. You know, JJ Zeus is like it's like close to an all club lock, just an absolute monster. But like, what else are they bringing on offense? That's not really clear to me. I think their D line's actually pretty tough. They go out there, they get blocks. They can move the disc after. Connor Russell, I think, was a player who I wasn't expecting to be a big difference maker for them, who was. Jolie Krebs is playing really well. But yeah, I'm still worried about the O-line. I wonder if they're going to tinker with the personnel a little bit after this weekend. You know, they're losing to good teams. In fact, it's kind of odd. They lost to the same teams at Pro Chips that they did at US Open. They lost to BFG,
I wonder if you think there's a matchup
Bears.
thing. Do you think there's a matchup thing?
It could be. I was on the sideline for some of that game against Polar Bears, and it was contentious. I do not get the sense that those teams get along very well, and that could be because they are a good foil for Exist. But that matchup was physical, and there was a lot of disagreement between some of the players on the teams about how the game should be played. So, you know, that's just from what I saw from 8 points or whatever, 6 points of that game. It was very back and forth. But Polar Bears just outplayed them in that matchup. So that kind of makes me worry because Polar Bears is good, but I don't know if they're quite that BFG amp level, you know? And the fact that Exist can't get over the hump against a team like that is worrying. They beat Polar Bears also at US Open. It's worth noting. They have beaten Polar Bears, but
they've lost their the last 2 matchups against them.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm worried.
Interesting situation. I mean, obviously, losing Emily Barrett, super tough. I mean, such a key player for their offense. I think they're still. I think they get the right matchups. They could still make a run, Keith, but it just doesn't feel like that we've seen the ceiling, and it's hard to feel like they can win if they're not able to get wins over teams like BFG, who you're going to have to beat a team at that caliber if you want to win the title.
Maybe they'll get pre-injury Ann Worth. She'll just like show up and be right as rain and just fix everything.
All right. Let's time to take our question of the week here on Deep Look. Keith, what do we got?
Also, this actually comes from the Discord about the mixed division. This is from Hello Goodbye. Is the volatility of mixed mainly a function of it being mixed? For instance, strategy being more complex with different variance in size and speed between players, or unrelated factors like depth of talent or experience? What do you think leads to this kind of volatile mixed environment that we see year in and year out? Or is it a narrative that doesn't even really hold up when scrutinized? I'm adding that last part.
I think there's a few things at play. One is that the talent level across top teams is fairly level, and you don't have a super team. But look what happens when you do get a high concentration of top players on one team. Like, for instance, Mixtape last year. Well, they won the title. Like, it's not like this is somehow completely different from the other divisions. I also think there's like some teams are more focused on, getting their reps in at tournaments and not at practices. And so there's like more up and down swinginess during the regular season that tends to be ironed out by the time you get to nationals. Perhaps there is something to the idea that because it's mixed, it's a little different, but I feel like it's more has to do with the fact that, you don't have as structured a set of offensive and defensive looks with like continuity of coaching and stuff like that, where you have, if you look at Fury, right? They've had the same coaching staff for over a decade. I mean, I know Maddie took a couple years off, but like this program goes way back, and they have very similar structures, and they have people who've been playing for the team for like over a decade, and they know what they're doing every year. And sure, they're going to have some years where they're better than others. That probably has to do with talent and luck. But they're always going to be really good, and they're going to practice a lot, and they're going to show up during the regular season, and they're going to crush the teams that are beneath them. In the mixed division, half these teams don't have coaches, if not more than half. Some of them don't practice really. There tends to be more players coming in and out because you're getting more late career players who are, maybe leaving the single gender divisions to come and play mixed. And so I just think that creates a mix of like chemistry issues and lack of that same continuity that's going to cause things to be swingy if you just simply controlled for talent that you wouldn't see.
On top of all of those points, I think you may even see this being exacerbated by the semi-pro leagues. But I think if you took everybody who played in the mixed division and all of their years of competitive ultimate experience, said how many of those have been seasons of competitive mixed ultimate, and how many of those have been seasons of competitive single gender division ultimate, I think you would still find that there are more seasons of single gender competitive ultimate for them than there are mixed seasons, because people are playing college ultimate in single gender divisions. People are playing sometimes club ultimate in single gender divisions. Then you have single gender division club teams benefiting from pro league experience that they're getting together, extra reps. I think we're talking about that in those divisions, right? We're talking about how Raleigh Phoenix is helped by the Radiant season, or how Truck Stop is helped by the DC Breeze season. There isn't a mixed team for who that is true. There are mixed teams that have semi-pro players on them that probably benefited from that experience, but it's not the same as playing a mixed season prior altogether. So I think that is part of it as well, is that you just have a division that's younger, less mature. So I think that when you talk about less mature, you're looking at things like the institutionalization of the teams, how long have those teams been around, the coaching staffs. The mixed division's like only recently even been having coaches, period. Right? It's a younger division, so there's less experience for those coaches to have drawn on. Some of those coaches may be coming from also coaching single gender division play. Like, there's all these things, I think, and they all add up and lead to some of the volatility of the division. There's player movement. I think that's another thing that you mentioned. So I think there's more player movement as well. And I think that because there's a less experienced pool of players that you're working with, individual players moving has a bigger impact. You add 1 to 2 big name players to a mixed division elite team, and I think that has a bigger impact than it might in the single gender division. So all of those things to me are theories as to why you see this swinginess in the mixed division that, while present, is not as much a fixture as it is in the single gender divisions, I should say.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will be joined by Phoenix's Alex Barnett and Bridget Mizener. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Deep Look. Joining us now from Raleigh, Phoenix is Captain Bridget Mizener as well as Alex Barnett. Welcome to the program. Congratulations on a Pro Championships victory and probably earning the 1 seed at Nationals. You come in as a lower seeded team, Bridget, and there's kind of a big question mark about how the team is going to do. Ultimately, you win all of your games, some of them by wide margins. Was this, when you came into the tournament, did you expect that Phoenix would have this kind of ceiling to go and win every game and win the tournament?
We don't go into games thinking we can't win them. I don't think a lot of folks outside of the team thought that a win was in the cards for us, but we just took it one game at a time, and things turned out pretty well.
Alex, y'all got to play against Scandal a couple of times at this tournament. But after, I actually want to go back to the first day where you play 4 games, you get some big wins, the big upset over Scandal. What was the sense of the team right then? Was it, hey, this is all part of the plan? Was it, we're ecstatic, we're still building, and we're already doing this well? What was the sense of the team after you went 4-0?
I think there's definitely a lot of excitement. Obviously, that's a really great result from the day. But I think something that we focused on a lot this year so far has been our growth mindset and just wanting to work towards the next thing. So I think even after that 4-0 day, it was immediately okay, let's make sure that we're getting enough food, getting enough rest, taking care of ourselves, because there's still more.
So I want to ask you about, back in July, you play your first tournament. It's almost preseason-ish, right? It's PEC East, and you win 5 straight games against mostly lower level teams, and then you play Scandal in the final and they crush you 11-6. What's changed from then to now? That could be, I won't speculate. What's changed? How did you go from losing to them by 5 to beating them twice?
I think you're exactly right that we saw PEC as a little bit of an early season tournament. We were still trying things out strategically, as well as our personnel sort of configurations on the field. And we didn't have our coaching staff there, which makes a huge difference, especially playing high-level teams. But between then and now, we went through, I think some of us on the team have started calling it angsty August, which is that long stretch of late summer where you only play each other and you're really going at each other and honing your stuff internally and not really worrying about prepping for tournaments and other stuff like that. So I was excited to get out of angsty August and actually take what we had been doing and see how it matched up against some other teams. So to me, that's the difference, is having a long incubation time to work on ourselves. I think that's the team growth is a huge part of that. So the personal growth, everyone's buckling down and doing their best and really getting the best shape and preparing for what's going to be the end of the season. But then also a lot of the team stuff that we hadn't really gotten a chance to finalize and figure out exactly what we wanted to do with that yet. We were able to sort of pare down exactly what we need to focus on. And I think that's going to be a huge thing that we get to do out of this tournament too, is just focusing on the team cohesion and coming together, which is cool.
That's actually kind of touches on what I was going to ask about, because we didn't get a chance to see Phoenix at the U.S. Open. We saw a number of these top teams at that tournament. We've only seen Phoenix at one other tournament this year. To my understanding, the team was still running, kind of pod size lines, not even an O&D, which probably I assume is the plan, but maybe isn't. It feels like the team is not necessarily at the end of the season-long journey. You're not at the point where, okay, we've just wrapped with the regular season. Obviously, that's what's actually happening, but it felt like the team could have been a little bit behind where other teams were in the progression of their season. Do you feel like, Alex, that the team is where you expect it to be now, or is this feel like you're ahead of schedule?
No, I think this is exactly where I was hoping we'd be by now. I think that obviously coming off a huge win like this we wanted this to be like our test for nationals essentially. And I'd say we passed with flying colors. So obviously there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think that it's cool that we can come into that sort of knowing exactly what we need to do to be successful. That's a huge win on our part.
Lots of impressive individual performances. Don Colton had a huge final and has just been very impressive, obviously, in the college season through into now into this club season. What does she and maybe some other key players on the team bring to the table that has helped this team play above kind of the level that maybe even some of the players on the team expected to this point, Bridget?
I honestly want to pass the Dawn question off to Alex, but I'll say some nice things about Dawn. Dawn is a player that, I mean, I don't need to tell you all what Dawn is like as a player. You can see it on the tape. What you see is really what you get from Dawn. She is the hardest working person that I've ever personally played with, and it shows on the field. But aside from, it's not only the on-field production that is so big for us that she brings, it's also that level of work ethic and commitment really sets the tone for the team off the field and in practices and in all of our other workouts and things like that. So obviously Dawn is one of those folks that I'm stoked every day that I get to play with her and not against her.
How much did the success of the Raleigh Radiants and, you know, even seeing some of the similar cores that you are competing against now in the PUL, how much did that inform or alter this season? What do you think about that, Alex?
I was actually thinking about that the other day. I think it's pretty funny. It's sort of a similar like season arc so far, where it's like maybe we start off a little bit like a little lackluster and people start doubting us a little bit, but then sort of like as the season goes on, we get like these big wins towards the end. I think that is something that really shows the growth mindset that we're working on. I mentioned that earlier. Just like we're not worried about early season results. You know, that's not what people care about. People care about like the championship at the end. So if we're willing to like start and really work through things at the beginning, then by the end, hopefully those results are going to be exactly what we want to see. So I'm hoping it's the exact same exponential season arc.
In 2019, Phoenix makes this run to the semis, has this incredible game, and, you know, comes so close to making it to the final. And, you know, we're thinking about, wow, like, look at the progression of this team. We've seen this city and the youth talent sort of bubbling up over time. And then, boom, the pandemic hits. It kind of like slows everything down. Obviously, you've had good seasons since then, but haven't quite reached those same highs. Does this feel like a return to the trajectory that we saw in 2019, even as you've had player turnover and, you know, new faces coming up from the Pleiades side and other, you know, younger players infusing the team?
I personally am not worried about narrative trajectory. I'm worried about the growth trajectory of the player base that we have, the core of the team, learning and growing and folding new up and coming players, local players into that fold. The 2019 season was really special. We were really thrilled with that result. Obviously, we wish we could have gone all the way, but that was kind of a huge breakthrough moment and let the team know that we are capable of everything we think we are. And that belief hasn't really changed since then. So none of our conversations, none of our internal team narrative is about getting back to 2019 or repeating our arc from 2019. It's a totally different team. It's a totally different year. Yeah, we're looking ahead exclusively, not looking back.
Well, when you look at some of the things that make the team different, you know, obviously the team lost some really experienced players who had been really around the block in club, whether you're talking about Claire Revere or Kayla Strick or Cammie Groom, who you were playing against in the final now. One of the players who brought back some of that experience is Chena Tickholm. Bridget, what has it been like playing with Chena? What has she brought to the team? And for the rest of the team that's with so many young players in key roles, what kind of challenges has it created having such a young group?
Okay, yeah, two parts to that question. One is Chena and one is the young player challenges. I'll start with the first one. So Q, it's been so nice to have Q around this year, both on the Radiance side. That was, in my mind, sort of an introduction to Q, and then we get to have her for sort of the longer season, the club season. And it's been the thing other than the talent, the on-field talent, is the experience piece, but not all experienced players I've known or played with take the care and the time to impart all of that experience to teams like Q has. So that's been really, really awesome. She's super engaged with us on the field, super engaged with new players as far as tactics and strategy and skill building, super engaged with leadership, offering little tips and pointers and advice, just everything you could ask for in a teammate, especially coming in and now being local to the area. It's been awesome to have her around. And the flip side of that question was on what the areas for growth of having a younger roster, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. It's really exciting to me personally to have a roster like this, where there are a lot of folks who are really experiencing their first elite club competition. These are folks who have never been to a Pro Champs, let alone a Pro Champs final. This is like a program first for Phoenix, winning a TCT event like this, I believe. Maybe we won Elite Select, but definitely the first time we've won Pro Champs. And I guess our perspective on that is that none of it is a challenge so much as an opportunity for growth, and to throw some of those folks into the fire, having folks like Sarah McKee take Manu in the Molly semi, and you all should go check the tape on that one. That's so exciting for me. And these are folks who, are not even, the Pleiades folks, and I can say this as a Pleiad, but these Pleiades folks, they've had all that experience. They've had that big game experience. But some of these folks from, state or other places where they haven't necessarily gone and won 25 college championships, to have them have that big game experience and ball out is really, really fun.
Alex, who's the best team you played this weekend? Who are you worried about at Nationals?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm worried about anyone in particular. Every team that we could be worried about is an opportunity for us to just get better. But I'd say that, Scandal is going to be a very scary team at Nationals. Obviously, it was a universe point game, like that we had to make a comeback to win that one in the pool play game, and then finals they were missing a handful of their starters. Like that's going to be a different team than we're going to see at Nationals. So I'm really excited to see. And I think that both teams, both of us in that final, like that wasn't necessarily our best game of the weekend. So I'm excited to see what we look like in full form. The other team I'm really excited to hopefully see at Nationals is Fury. We were sort of hoping to get a crack at them this weekend, and it just didn't quite work out. But hopefully next time.
And I'll just follow up. You had some crazy swingy games. Like against Molly, you go up 7-2 with a monster break run, and then they come all the way back to tie it at tens. And there were multiple, this is really true of the entire Pro Champs across all divisions, but there were these just crazy swings in the games. What was it like to kind of play through those ups and downs? It wasn't like everything was just constant smooth sailing out to a 4-break win. You kind of had to weather some storms.
Obviously, we want to work on closing out games better. If we put teams in 6.7 point holes, that's a margin we'd like to keep through the end of the game. Obviously, that's not always going to happen. We punch and then teams will punch back. That's what good teams do. And so I think we were grateful to have been challenged that way at Pro Champs, to have a little bit of mental fortitude to weather those storms, like you said, Charlie. and not have teams roll over. We didn't come to Pro Champs to roll teams or to have teams, we want to get everybody's best game. And we're glad that I think we got a lot of them.
So now we've seen now, right? And obviously you've seen it yourselves that this Phoenix team is good enough to beat the best teams in the division. So I'm gonna put your feet to the fire here a little bit, and I think we'll start with you, Bridget. Can this season be a success for Phoenix if you do not win the club title?
Absolutely, it has already been a success for us. It goes without saying that we think we can win a club title. We've shown it, and that is our goal going into nationals. But to define the success of a season on a single day, a single game, is not something that I personally subscribe to. But yeah, I won't say that that we're not thinking about it.
It's a lot easier, I think, to prepare for the future after a loss because you can think about the things that went wrong and work to fix them. It's harder to do so maybe after winning all of your games. So what do you take away as things that you need to get better at? And I'll ask this to Alex, between now and really for you all nationals. I mean, regionals is kind of it's just a formality for you all. So what do you need to do to get ready for the increase in level that everybody's going to bring at nationals?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that you mentioned it's easier to learn from mistakes and losses. I think that even though we came out with the win, there were plenty of mistakes that were made. And that we can go back and we can watch the film and there's so many things we can learn from. You mentioned the swings, the big swings, Molly coming back and tying it. There are obviously times where we were not playing our best. And I think that that gives us a huge opportunity to learn from those moments. So I'm not too worried about us learning. We've got plenty. And then we have an amazing coaching staff. We're really lucky to have them. They're always using their brains and spinning their wheels and trying to get us better.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for coming on. And congratulations once again on winning pro championships. And certainly looking forward to seeing you all play at nationals.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We're looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. Bridget Mizener, Alex Barnett with us here on Deep Look. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Deep Look. Thank you so much to Alex and Bridget for coming on. What a weekend for Phoenix. Before we go further, I need to just acknowledge I made an idiotic mistake. I said that their big semifinal was in 2019 against Fury. No, it was in 2021. The pandemic has just warped my time scales, Keith, and I don't know when things have happened anymore. It feels like a long time ago that we saw them play that game, and yet it was literally under 2 years ago.
I'm pretty sure that being correct about years at this point is kind of like college eligibility. You get +1, +2. It's more of a fuzzy idea if it feels right,
It's just going off the vibes for when things happened.
Yeah. I think this person should be graduated, but they're probably not.
Anyway, I mean, the scope of what I was trying to ask, I think, is still the right thing. All right. So they last year, they had a good season. They didn't have necessarily an incredible season. They didn't win pro champs. They got to the final and lost. And, they kind of lost big to Molly the times that they faced them during the regular season. And then they come up short to Brute Squad at nationals. But, Keith, it does feel like they showed that their ceiling is quite a bit higher, and they now clearly enter the conversation along with Scandal and Fury and maybe Molly and maybe Brute as teams that you could see winning the national championships this year.
They do, and I asked if they felt like they were ahead of schedule, and they said no. But to me, they are. I mean, my expectations are obviously different than theirs. But we sat here on the show last week and said, okay, we could see them being good. We're hemming and hawing on whether or not they could beat Brute Squad. Well, they answered that question with no room for error. They absolutely came out and stomped Brute Squad, and that was them throwing up the signal to start the weekend. I mean, 15-9 on our Brute Squad, and from there they just kept it going. Really impressive performance from them, and did not feel fluky. Didn't feel like it was just like, oh, it's windy, they're benefiting from that. No, they looked the part for this weekend at least.
Scandal's only losses coming to Phoenix. Otherwise, they had pretty comfortable wins, although they did have a close 15-14 win over Fury in semis. No Claire Trope in the final, where they lost by 2 to Phoenix. Does it feel like they've come back down at all from US Open to you, Keith? Or the teams have figured them out? Or is it just kind of like, no, this is still a really good team, and Phoenix had their number?
They still feel like a really good team. I think the level that they were playing at the US Open maybe felt a little unsustainable, but I think that them coming back to like regressing, so to speak, is still a title worthy team, a team that I think you can make your argument that they're the favorite going into the internationals or into the postseason, however you want to frame that. They still didn't have their complete roster this weekend. I think that they are still very much a real team that has a shot at winning a title, and this weekend doesn't really hurt my estimation of that, except that it presents another challenger to that spot. That it cuts up your probabilities a little bit more, but their individual team performance didn't make me concerned about their ability to execute when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Trope out for the 2 biggest games of the weekend, and it's like they beat Fury with no Trope. Like, that feels like a really good sign, because at times at US Open it felt like, okay, if other teams can just limit Trope, they're going to have a chance to win. But Trope wasn't there, and Fury still lost.
Well, who knew that they were training, that they had an understudy, a Claire Trope understudy. Blaise Sevier is like it's like they got a not a knockoff Trope. Like that feels like an insult, but like they found a high quality, not unbranded version, Yeah. It's unbelievable how well Blaise Sevier has been playing this season. Like, I don't know what the requirements are for Breakout Player of the Year anymore. Even I'm losing track. But we're gonna make them whatever it takes for Blaise Sevier to win the Breakout, because this has been unbelievable performance for her. But not alone. Obviously Cammie Groom has been a big deal for them too. Can we talk a little about this ridiculous semifinal between them and Fury? I mean,
it was wild. 37 turnovers for Scandal.
I don't know if I've ever seen a progression of scores that happened in this game. I mean, it was 10-7 Scandal. Fury scores 7 consecutive goals.
Yep.
14-10. Fury game. All they got to do is hold once.
It's a wrap.
They literally, Jesse O'Connor checks in the disc like 2 feet away from the end zone. Going downwind. Up 14-10. They never score again. Fury gives up 5 straight goals after going on a 7-0 run to lose 15-14 on Universe.
And there were 13 turnovers on Universe.
And yeah, the 5-0 Fury run, or the 5-0 Scandal run, was like not some sloppy mess until that last point, which was disaster. A total grind on that last point. But prior to that, it was not like that. It was a lot of Blaise Sevier and Cammie Groom, and Ashley Buke also had a nice performance. And I think what I like about Scandal, they don't maybe this is a demerit in some ways. They don't have that. It's game time, center the rock to me person. They don't have that handler, but instead they get it done by committee. They have like 5 credible people who could be that person for a half, and in aggregate they get that. Whether it's Margaret Walker or Lisa Dang, like they cobble it together through this kind of team approach to having a big time thrower who can take over offensively. So I'm very curious to see how that will play out on in the high pressure national stage. But so far, that has been a recipe for success for them when they have such dominant downfield players.
Crazy game.
Were
Were there more breaks than holds in this game? Let's take a look.
Got it.
Each team had 8 breaks. So that's 16 goals, and there were 29 total points scored. So yes. 16 breaks, 13 holds. Crazy.
I mean, I was actually on the stream at the time, and you hear like, oh, Scandal's up 10-7, they're in control. Game's kind of over. Then you hear, oh no, Fury went on a 7-0 run. Wow, that game's super over. And then like a half hour after the round, someone's like, oh yeah, Scandal won that game. I said, what? I thought the person misspoke, that they must have meant Fury won that game. But no, Scandal in fact did win that game.
Wild stuff. Molly Brown, coming off the national championship last year, has never quite looked the part again yet. Where are you at with this Molly team?
I think in a lot of ways you could kind of copy paste what I said about Exist here. Like, I feel like the way that they played at Nationals last year, they have just not really gotten that everything's clicking feel to them yet. And that is a little concerning for me. At least we know that they can pull it together at the end of the season. I think they really missed Lisa Picaithley this weekend. She was having a really strong season for them prior to this. But I think they really missed her. I think they looked a little bit phased by the wind. They're still running pretty deep into their roster. It's funny because I used to joke that it felt like, they obviously have this Colorado pipeline, and it felt like all the Colorado players were like in the Claire Chastain mold. Like, they all want to play like Claire Chastain. Well, now I feel like the players that they're recruiting all want to play like a Cardenas, like a Cardenas sister, it's little, the Cardenas sister style play is like become a lot of the identity of the team. It feels like a lot more short passes, a lot of like almost like running game. There's this signature thing that Valeria does where she fields the pull and then she throws it forward, and she'll try and get off like maybe 3 to 4 2-yard passes where they're just like running next to each other if she can initiate a possession that way. And it feels like the running game of a football team. Like, we're gonna play this short game, suck you in, and then go around you. So we'll just play, like, bring the defense in, and then we'll throw over you. And that kind of feels like the style of play is like becoming a part of the identity of the team. They couldn't really hold up in the wind, I think, all told. I'm a little worried about their ability to execute. I hope that getting Lisa McKinley back can paper over some of that. They weren't no Stacey Gaskill either. But yeah, it's just they don't feel like they're quite all together yet.
Well, they didn't feel like that last year either, for what it's worth.
Exactly.
Until they went on the run in the bracket. So a lot of talent on that team, that's for sure. And talent usually rises to the top at the Club National Championships. So any final thoughts, Keith, on the women's division?
Yeah, I told some of our fellow Ultiworld folks this, but I'm kind of curious about this Sixers team.
Ooh.
They announced on social media that they were adding some pickups just prior to this tournament, and those were not some of them played, but they're picking up a couple, like Carla Link, who played with GB World's team, and Charlotte Shaw, who's another really strong European player. They added a couple other players to the team, and it kind of feels like this team was missing some of the top end talent with like the losses of Lauren Kimura and company. And you can put an asterisk next to that because I know Molly Wedge was injured this weekend. Hopefully she's going to be okay. She would be a big loss for them. She's a very important part of what they do.
Non-contact knee injury. Tough.
Always scary. But, they have BDS, Alyssa Mason, Sarah Jacobson. Like, that trio is just about as good as any three. In a 3v3 matchup, you're going to feel comfortable no matter who they're going up against. They looked like they were going to beat Brute Squad in that last consolation game. Yeah, they're still, they still got trucked by Scandal. They played close with Molly. They got trucked by Fury. So, like, I'm not saying they're going to make semis or something like that, but they feel like the team that's on the outside of that group that could throw a wrench, that could be the upset team. I'm just going to put a pin in them. Like, keep an eye on this team as we go down the line, because
you have a good history for calling Sixers to get a big win.
If they beat Brute Squad to win Northeast Regionals, or they're 3 seed in some pool and they knock a team out in quarters or pre-quarters or whatever, like, I think that they're a team to watch. The other team that was impressive to me in their makeup but not their results is Riot. They just feel like, we all know that they're young. They feel better than they should be given their experience level. And I feel like there's room for them to get better during the season. I think I said that even coming into this tournament. I think that what I saw confirmed that. So they're a team that, their youth could come back and bite them. They could struggle when they're in some big moments later this year. But I also think there's a little bit of extra ceiling there that maybe isn't there for other people. And Abby Abramovich looks awesome. Big fan of the way she's playing.
I want to point out Northeast Regional is about to be fire in the women's division. we got 3 really good teams. They got 3 bids. They just missed out on getting 1 or even 2 additional bids. And so then you've got Starling and Iris and Siege lurking, trying to pick off one of those top 3 teams. That's not going to be easy. I don't even know who the favorite is right now. I guess I'd say Brute, but I think Bent has high ceiling. Obviously, Sixers looks better than they've looked earlier in the year. By the way, did you see that Alyssa Mason travel clip on Twitter?
Oh, I retweeted it. Yes.
So good.
Very funny.
I don't want to see people giving grief to people about sliding their pivot foot a quarter inch. This was not that. This was the LeBron clip where he walked up the court with the ball without dribbling for 10 steps.
Yeah, Alyssa may have got busted, but to be sure, she was not the only major violator of the travel rules this weekend that I saw. It's not exclusive, but she did get busted by her own teammate, which is pretty amazing.
Well, okay, so then here's the other question, Keith. Where do you put the line for title contenders in the women's division right now?
I think I'm going to go with the big 4 right now. I think I'm not sold on Brute Squad after this weekend. I thought that US Open was somewhat convincing, but so much is riding on a game in which Molly Brown really tanked. It's hard to decide exactly which side of do they go at the top of the challenger tier or the bottom of the contender tier, I think I can see the argument either way, and I think for me they're at the top of the challenger tier. So I'd say Scandal, Phoenix, Fury, Molly Brown feel like my big 4 right now.
Yeah, Brute lost to 3 of those teams at Pro Champs. And I think they didn't play Molly. No, I'm sorry. Who did they not play in that group?
Well, they definitely didn't play Phoenix because Phoenix wasn't at.
No, they did.
Did you Pro Champs?
Oh, you're talking about US Open. I'm talking about Pro Champs. Phoenix beat them.
Pro Champs.
Scandal beat
they
them.
did not
Molly
play.
beat them.
They did not play Fury.
Yeah.
But they got walloped by the other teams.
Yeah. We'll see about this Brute Squad team. Was Levka there? I don't think so.
Nope.
Well,
no.
I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear about any of it then.
Yeah, we don't. You don't want to finalize.
She might be the best player on that team.
I mean, she was second runner-up for Player of the Year last year, so she might be the best player on almost any team.
Right. All right. What else we got here? I think that's pretty much it. We're getting ready for sectionals, of course, and we start getting ready for regionals in a couple of weeks here, and should be a very interesting set of regionals. You know what we need to do, Keith? We need to talk bids. Let's just break down the bid picture really quick. Final algorithm results are out from USA Ultimate. As mentioned earlier, Parcha and Grit last in. So 3 bids for the Mid-Atlantic in the women's division. That was kind of the big question mark was, could Starling maybe sneak in there, get a bid for the Northeast? Not going to happen. So 1 bid for Great Lakes, North Central, South Central, and Southeast. and then 3 bids for the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, Northwest, and Southwest. Nothing feels too crazy. Parcha and Grit being in over Starling and Iris and Ozone, I have no problem with that. Do you, Keith?
No, that all seems like it tracks.
Men's division wasn't really dramatic going in. So GOAT ends up holding on to that 3rd bid for the Northeast. Northwest ends up with 3 bids. Just the 1 bid for the North Central, although they do have teams at 16 and 18, General Strike and Sub-Zero. I definitely think General Strike could get the bid to Nationals.
Everyone's going to be scared of them. I think everyone's going to be worried that they're going to be the one who loses the bid to General Strike. I'm pretty sure.
Final bid allocation, 1 bid for the Great Lakes, North Central, and Southwest. 2 bids for the Mid-Atlantic and South Central. 3 bids for the Northeast, Northwest, and Southeast. How about the Southeast getting 3 bids, Keith? RDU. Doing it. Pony win.
Wild. Just not,
it wasn't even
not
that
what you
close,
expect.
though. It wasn't even that close. Like, they were 150 points clear of Condors.
Well, we kind of knew what was going on in the men's division coming into the weekend. This was the most, I think, settled coming into the weekend. And we talked a little about Condors, being frustrated that they had to travel with a skeleton crew. And that's where their bid went, up in smoke there.
Meanwhile, drama, as discussed earlier, Hybrid sneaking past Shine to get a 2nd bid for the Great Lakes and take 1 away from the Southeast. So the Southeast ending up with just 1 bid. That's going to be brutal region. That's the only, South Central also gets 1 bid. Southwest, North Central, Mid-Atlantic, and Great Lakes end up with 2. Northeast, Northwest with 3. It all feels about right. I think you could make a case that the Southeast deserves better, but they have a lot of teams in the top 30. But none of them could quite get it done, and Shine had their chances and kind of blew it after a nice start to the season.
Indeed, and Toro didn't do them any favors. Toro going 4-12 this season didn't help the Southeast. But you're right, Southeast Regionals is going to be brutal. I think there are going to be like 4 teams in the field that could win games at Nationals, at least.
All right.
South Central also going to be tough environment.
That is going to do it for this edition of Deep Look. Thank you for tuning in. We will be back with you next week to start to get you ready for regionals and beyond. Keith, NFL season begins this week. You got any predictions for the upcoming season?
The Jets offense is going to be worse than everybody thinks it is after Hard Knocks. Go Falcons. Could win the worst division in football.
Niners all the way,
I don't know,
baby.
Man. That division with the Jags and the Colts looks pretty. The Colts look, with their injuries, they look absolutely pathetic. So
that's the Titans division, right?
Yeah.
All right, go Titans.
I think the Jags are everyone's big favorites there.
Yeah, I took the Titans though, plus like 400 to win the division. Just watch. All right. Sub bonus this week in our Out the Back segment. We are going to talk Dynasty Draft. This was a kind of a cool thing. Keith and company did a draft of players. And what were the exact parameters, Keith?
We're counting Club, the USA Club National, and WCC titles. And you get 8 players and however many titles they can win in 10 years. Whoever has the most titles wins.
So it's a 10-year time frame. So they drafted their players looking ahead 10 years into the future. We're going to break down the draft, good picks, bad picks, and more. So join us there. You can become a subscriber for less than $4 a month at ultiworld.com/subscribe. By the way, AOUGC, the Asia Oceanic Guts, Ultimate and Guts Championships. I got to get the order right. Happening now in the Philippines. Day 1 of action just wrapped up earlier. They're 12 hours ahead of Eastern time. So pretty cool stuff. It's country based. So kind of like a little mini preview for next year's World Ultimate Championships. You can watch live games if you're a standard or all access subscriber to Ultiworld. So get yourself a subscription and check out the games.
What level of subscriber do you have to be to watch some Guts?
The Guts final will be broadcasted live.
Oh my gosh. If you've never watched Guts, it is like nothing you've ever seen before. It's both exactly what you think it is and also gonna break your brain as an Ultimate player.
When I went to 2016 Worlds, I spent some time watching Guts. It's very popular in Albuquerque, where I grew up, and many of the Albuquerque players were kind of the core of a team that I can't remember now if they won or if they like got to the final. I'm pretty sure they won the whole thing. They won the World Championship of Guts. It's kind of like, I mean, everybody understands the basic idea, right? You throw as hard as the other team as you can, and they try to catch it. And if they catch it, they score. And if they don't catch it, you score.
Yeah, but you're like 10 feet away from each other.
They're very close. And so the thing that makes it interesting to me, of course, they use a lighter disc. If you threw an Ultra Star, people would like break their nose and stuff. But they have all these different like pitches, basically. They like have the fastball, and they have the slider, and they have the one that like does a crazy curveball, and they all have these wild names, none of which I remember right now. But it should be fun. I'm looking forward to watching the final.
Imagine it's like if there was a version of tennis, only you had to catch the serve. Like it was just people serving at each other directly, and you had to try and catch it. It's hard to describe it. It's wild.
All right, so AOUGC continues through Saturday. For Keith Rayner, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.